Welcome everybody to our first virtual lecture on Chapter 1. Now we're starting with Chapter 1 just to go over some of the basics, and because Chapter 1 includes a little bit of the scientific method and a short review of just some of the concepts that we'll be talking about. Mainly some of the number concepts, though the book does contain a general chemistry section. At least the book that you have should contain a general chemistry section. Now that I think about it, I'm not even sure that it does. There are some texts out there that have a general chemistry section, though you should still have some general chemistry knowledge. I hope you have a chemistry book from your old chemistry class. The concepts of polarity and ions and covalent bonds and those kind of things, sometimes it's good to be able to review some of that stuff. Now, with this chapter, we do have a couple of learning goals. We want to just define chemistry and identify what chemicals are, or at least in this section. And for the most part, as we go through these lectures, I will be pointing out what the objectives are, or the learning goals. Now this is a diagram of hemoglobin. We'll really talk about hemoglobin a lot later when we get into the biochemistry portion. But this is a molecule that transports oxygen to the tissues, and it also carries carbon dioxide to the lungs, so it is a transporter protein. It's a chemical, or at least the bits that make up this overall structure are chemicals. Amino acids make up the chains that these proteins are, make up the building blocks that these protein chains are comprised of. The amino acids themselves are made of atoms, which we could call atoms chemicals. Yeah, atoms are also chemicals. And it transports oxygen and carbon dioxide, both chemicals. So one of the things you should take away from just this first slide is that everything depicted or talked about here so far is a chemical. Now, chemistry is the study of the composition, structure, I can think faster than I can write, composition, structure, properties, and reactions of matter. Reactions. So that's what chemistry sort of is. It's the study of all of that. And it happens all around you every day. Chemistry being studied and chemistry just happening. Photosynthesis, for example, plants making oxygen from sunlight, you metabolizing the food that you've eaten to make energy. All of that is chemical. Being able to see, it's a chemical reaction happening in your eye. So chemistry is a study of all those different aspects of that. The structures, compositions, properties, again, and reactions, though we tend to focus on structure and reactions a lot in this class. This picture is actually showing an antacid tablet dissolving into water, and this one is breaking down into carbon dioxide gas and some other salt. Depends on what this tablet is made of. If it's a bicarbonate, then it's making water. If it's let's say like calcium carbonate, it could be making calcium chloride or something like that, or just putting calcium ions into solution. But that's the chemical reaction that's happening and the chemical change that this tablet is undergoing. So chemistry and matter. Let's talk about what matter is. Matter is another word for all substances that take up space. Substances with volume. So everything has matter. We can measure how much matter you have. To do it on Earth, we have to weigh things with a scale. Don't confuse weight with matter. Something's weight, I don't know if that's how you spell weight, is not how much matter something has, because in outer space you don't have any weight. It's just a convenient measure of how much mass you have, or how much matter you contain. So matter is described as mass, and that's measured in things like grams or pounds. Or there's lots of measurements. And acid tablets that we just looked at, that's matter. Water, glass, air, all of these things, they're matter. Sunlight isn't matter. Sound isn't matter. Sound has to travel through matter, but sound itself is just an effect. It's like saying, your thoughts are real. Well, they're real in a way, right? But they don't take up space. So your thoughts and light and, energy, these things aren't matter. Now let's talk about chemicals. Chemicals are substances that have the same composition and properties wherever you find them. So something like water is going to be H2O in China or in Mexico or in Canada or in the United States. It's going to have this structure. It's going to have lone pair electrons. It's going to have a dipole that's negative on one side and positive on the other. It's going to hydrogen bond with neighboring water molecules. All of those things, the properties and the structure, it's going to have a little hydrogen bond. All of those things are going to be true everywhere we find water. Because that's what a substance, a chemical substance is. It's a set thing, and you might remember that from your Gen Chem days. So yeah, constant composition and properties wherever we find them. Everything that takes up space, everything that is matter is a chemical. So sugar's a chemical, oxygen's a chemical. I think we went over that. Interestingly, everything is also a poison. You can die from absolutely everything. I think it was Socrates or maybe it was Aristotle that said the difference between, maybe it was neither one of those guys, it could have been someone like Pluto, and anything, the difference between a poison and an antidote is just the proportion, how much of the stuff you have. Everything can be taken in excess and cause negative effects. Chemicals, there are no such things as chemicals that are safe and chemicals that are toxic, right? It's all about how much of the stuff your body can tolerate. Substances that are made by chemists that we use every day, we would call chemicals. Those are usually the ones that we think about when we talk about chemicals. We don't think about things like water, but everything is a chemical, whether it's man-made or natural. Let's take toothpaste, for example. Toothpaste has a combination of quite a few chemicals, and I've got a slide here to show you just a few of the ingredients in toothpaste. So there's calcium carbonate. This is used as the abrasive to help remove the plaque. There's sorbitol. This prevents the loss of water and the hardening of the toothpaste, so it keeps it that sort of liquid. Sorbitol we'll talk about later when we get to the sugar alcohols. Sodium lauryl sulfate, used to loosen plaque. Titanium dioxide, this makes the toothpaste white and opaque, meaning it's got that cloudy appearance or non-see-through appearance. Sodium fluorophosphate prevents the formation of cavities by helping the tooth enamel. Methyl salicylate, this gives the toothpaste that wintergreen flavor, so that's a flavoring. So you can see there's a few, next time you look at your toothpaste label, sometimes you might even see, I think the sodium fluorophosphate might be the source of fluorine. I was going to say your toothpaste might be fluoridated. Fluoride? I don't know the word. Now it's escaping me. Fluoridated, I think that's the word. Sometimes water systems or water supplies get fluorine treatments. I know fluorine is in some levels good for your teeth. So that may be the source of it there, the sodium fluorophosphate. But the next time you're looking at your labels, now you'll at least know what some of those things do. And even if it's slightly different, like titanium trioxide instead of dioxide, or sodium lauryl sulfate is maybe something like sodium or potassium lauryl sulfate, it'll give you an idea of what that chemical is doing. Now, the lectures are going to be riddled with these learning checks, and the way that I would like you guys to do these is to pause the video and give it a good guess, and then hit unpause and or play if you prefer, and see if you were right. What I don't want to do is like sit here and go, okay, think about this, and let time roll by and then give you an answer. So I'll be giving you the answer to these learning checks almost instantly. So again, it's yours. It's your the challenge is on you to pause these and give them a go. So which of the following would contain chemicals? Give it a shot. Sorry about that. And if you said everything but A, then you were correct. A, sunlight, this is not a chemical, but everything else there was a chemical. It's a good job. Let's talk about the scientific method. Now, this is a set of general principles that actually helps describe how a scientist thinks. I actually just said exactly what that sentence already said. I apologize about that. What I mean by these principles is for when you make observations, and observations don't have to be something you set out to do. Just sitting there, you're making observations about me, for example. Here, you're observing my voice. Okay, it's the first time you've heard it. It's gonna trigger some things in your mind. You're gonna try to maybe guess what I might look like, or how old I might be. So these are observations, right? And they could be anything: sensing if something's warm or hot, or light or dark. All of these would be considered observations. But an observation about nature, so you sort of think about something, you ask a question about what you're observing. When your observation and what you sort of are guessing about your observation always seems to be true, you can use that as a kind of predictive behavior. So what we typically include as a scientific method is the observation, the making of a measurement, right? Then the question you ask yourself, and we call this the hypothesis. The hypothesis gives a possible explanation for what it is that you've seen. So your observation leads to, and in some cases, if it holds true all the time, a law. Like gravity, we observe that things always fall down. Okay, this leads to the law of gravity. The hypothesis then comes around trying to explain the law. Hypothesis wants to explain. Now, we can't just come up with a hypothesis and leave it at that. There's a giant magnet at the bottom of the center of the Earth, and it pulls everything down using gravity magnets. Or, there's a big spaghetti monster down there that somehow uses spaghetti tendrils to latch onto your soul and pull you down, holding you there because your body won't let your soul out. So gravity sort of appears, but apples and rocks and all those things have souls too, apparently. See, that's what a hypothesis is. And unless you can go and do an experiment, then it's a flawed hypothesis. So a good hypothesis has to be experiment or testable. So we need to do experiments. And the experiments ultimately, hopefully, lead to finding the relationship between your hypothesis and the observation. So, exploring things in outer space probably was a really big insight into what gravity might be, right? As we got farther away from the Earth, gravity didn't work anymore. And so we're like, oh, well, maybe gravity is associated with Earth. And then we land on the moon and there's some gravity. It's not as strong, but there's gravity. And then we say, okay, maybe it's large bodies or planets or moons, things that actually make gravity and not just gravity floating around in space. So experiments help to bring together those sort of observations and answers that you're looking for. And if you can do that in kind of a, if your hypothesis doesn't turn out, then you ask a new one and you test that hypothesis. And your experiment and hypothesis process, actually, this is a better picture. The next slide had the better picture. I should have just jumped here first. But this shows the last thing that I didn't mention. The fourth thing, the observations, hypothesis, experiments, and conclusion. Conclusion is last. The conclusions, once you've sort of fine-tuned your hypothesis and you found a way to test that hypothesis, and you keep getting consistent results, and then you hopefully have someone else test those results and they come up with the same thing, and then you can make a conclusion about whether your hypothesis is true, or I guess in that process, you find a lot of false hypotheses, and if you can prove that it's false, then you dump it and you come up with a new one. There's been a lot of theories about what chemistry is, right? What matter is made of. They used to think it was made of earth, wind, fire, and water. Now we don't think that anymore. So hypotheses and theories can change. But hopefully, these things that we decide are all based on observation and not just on feelings or on speculation or on just some sort of, wishful thinking. At least that's the scientific method. You can choose whether or not to adopt all of that or some of it, as some people do. Okay, learning check. Uh, each of these can be identified or described as an observation, a hypothesis, an experiment, or a conclusion. Go ahead and pause it. Give these a guess. So, during your visit to the gym, your trainer records that you ran for 25 minutes. Nobody's guessing anything. Nobody's saying that's how the world is. That's just what happened. That's an observation. B, scientific studies show that exercising lowers blood pressure. So the fact that there were some studies indicates that there was experiments that happened, but we didn't get to hear what those experiments were, so it's not an experiment. We don't know what the question was. We didn't hear if somebody was saying, um, you know, researchers think that exercising might lower blood pressure. That would be a hypothesis. This says scientific studies show that this is the case, that exercising lowers blood pressure. One activity affects another. That would be the conclusion you would draw. Your doctor thinks that your weight loss is due to the increased exercise. That's a guess. That's a hypothesis. Your doctor says, hey, you've been losing some weight. Has anything changed? You say, yeah, I've been working out. They're like, well, that might be it, right? Let's keep it up, or let's, see if, I guess you don't really want to experiment with that, right? Your doctor's like, oh, well, let's stop for a little while and see if your weight comes back, and then we can say that that's the case, right? I'm pretty sure that if, yeah, but that's a hypothesis. That wouldn't be necessarily one that you're trying to change. So hopefully you got those right. Now, the rest of this chapter really is just going to go over some of the tips and strategies for being successful in this class. I do have some other handouts that I could probably post onto Canvas if some of you are interested in those. It's just a lot of reading, probably similar to things you would have received if you took Chem 21 here at COS. Same set of materials that we all get to pass out to our students. And it's things like how to look for help and how to form a good group, and good things like writing notes as you watch something, and active reading. When you're reading your textbook, you should be stopping to write notes and highlighting things, and doing the in book practice problems. Well, I'm going to go over all that right now, but so again here we're going to look at effective learning strategies. So obviously, studying in a group can be beneficial. I don't know how viable that is in this sort of semester, though you guys, if you have Zoom accounts associated with COS, could probably use Confer Zoom via Canvas. I'd have to see if I can get that set up for us. I tried finding if I have a Zoom account through COS, and I don't think that's the case. I don't think I have one, but you guys could definitely set things up via your own Zoom accounts or via Skype. Exchange numbers, use the discussion board to set up times where you guys can meet, and do virtual study groups. Very, very useful. When I was doing my undergraduate stuff at Fresno State, by the way, I have a pretty roundabout academic career. I graduated high school here in Visalia at Redwood, started COS right away. I think I dropped out my first semester. I got like a couple Fs, just because I had been burnt out on school, right, for so many, 12 years of school. Ended up going into the workforce a couple of years, probably 7 or 8 years. Did a lot of fast food, worked in a hospital. Like, I was a manager at a couple places. Started working at Starbucks. I was an MA. I mean, I was working like 2 jobs overlapping for a long time, and that got really hard. And so after a long time, about 2009, I decided to go back to school, went back to COS, and just wrapped up. First I had to a petition to get all my Fs removed, and then got all my transferables done at COS. Did it in 1 year, 2 summer schools in 1 year, and then maybe I lied. That was 2008, because in 2009 I was ready to transfer. So I transferred to Fresno State 2009 as a went back to school first, COS, to try to be an X-ray tech, and then to get into the nursing program, and then to be I forget what else I was gonna do. So I was taking all of these like science classes, all of these micro and physio anatomy, and I don't know, there was some other classes I had, nutritions and stuff of those, just so that I could make the prereqs for the X-ray tech. And then it was, I'm going to go to Fresno State and be a clinical lab scientist, CLS. I thought that would be really fun. And that was a bio degree with a chem minor. Or actually, you had to take a bunch of specific classes like hematology and stuff, and they were chem classes. But if I took one extra chem class, I could apply for the minor. So I ended up doing that. And during that time, I was taking, the general chemistries, and then the general physicses, and then the organic chem and the analytical chem, and we were doing, the cell bio and the genetics and all of those things all at once. I micro and all of these Fresno State classes. I had like 19, 20 units every semester, just like slamming through it. I got through Fresno State in 3 years to get my bachelor's degree, and I did it by working in groups. I'm pretty much a loner, or was, growing up, or in school and stuff. And then just in life, I'm an introvert. I'm not really. I don't really like crowds. I don't really like the spotlight. If you know anything about Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ. I'm just very to myself in my head. Never ever wanted to be a teacher, and got all my stuff from my clinical lab scientist. Graduated, got my application for the training program. They have a long wait list. You have to go and do a year as an intern in a hospital before you can get your actual license, and there was a wait list to get into hospitals, and there was only one hospital in the area that actually takes interns, and they only take two a year, or two every 6 months. So it looked unlikely. So I decided to stick around school, Fresno State, and work on a master's. At that time, I took the MCAT on a whim, signed up for it, took it 2 days later, didn't study at all. I got a 12 out of 15 on my bio, because I was really good at the bio stuff. I had just graduated. But my Gen Chem and my verbal, unfortunately, my writing ability. I don't think it was my writing ability. I'm going to defend myself here in a moment. I think they ask stupid questions, to be honest. They ask really weird, dumb questions, and it's hard to know what they were being asked. So I didn't do well on that. But on the physical sciences, which is chemistry and physics, I only got an average of about 8 out of 15. So I thought, hey, I want to get my scores really good, because now I want to be an MD PhD. I want to go and be a doctor that does research. I want to have the PhD part, but I want to have the MD part. I don't want to see patients, but I want to be like, badass doctor. And so I went for the chemistry masters. I had some teachers that thought that I would be okay switching over from the dark side, they called it. So I got my master's in chem, and I did it while teaching chemistry labs. I thought that as a graduate I had to teach chemistry labs. I didn't know it was voluntary. So there I am teaching chemistry labs, and then next thing you know, I've taught Chem 1A, Chem 1B. I was teaching Chem, 3A, 3BL. These are all at Fresno State. I taught nat science, natural science, and then I graduated with my master's. I had a lot of really good relationships with the professors there and the administration, and they offered me a job. So then I'm a lecturer. I've been doing that. I got a job at a COS, and so now skip ahead to now. I've really changed a lot. I would never have been a teacher in my life. Now I like the job, but I owe a lot of my success to the groups that I worked in, and the really the work that you have to put in. I didn't have a job. My parents let me move back home while I was in school, so that I could focus on school like it was a job, and you really have to treat it that way, as I'm sure you guys know. You guys are living it. Um, all right. So success in chemistry, good study habits. So try to make connections with what you know. Go back and reread sections of the book over and over. Don't just read it once. I've read science books before. It's not like it's supposed to make sense, like a story or a narrative in your mind. You have to go back and reread and reread. If you're trying to do all your reading at night when you're tired, don't do that. Don't lay down and read. Sit in the chair, put the bright lights on, take some Adderall. Don't do that if you don't have it. But if you have it, take it. Do what you need to do. Caffeine, sugar, coffee, right? Um, those are going to help your brain, but you need to help yourself. And that is, make the environment conducive to studying. And I know that's hard this semester and past semesters, right? Everyone's stuck at home. So I am aware. But those are sort of the mindsets that you need to be in. Um, don't keep rereading notes. For this class, you'll be drawing structures, naming structures. That's why if you had a group or someone to study with, it's nice they draw a structure, you name it. You write the name, they draw it. Test each other. Um, Study at a regular pace. Don't cram. The quizzes in this course are set up to be the same week as the material. So you're going to get, chapter 12 next week, and then there's a chapter 12 quiz next week. So that's going to reward people that are reading ahead, and it's going to hurt people that aren't reading ahead. They're going to have to be digging through the book on the day of the quiz, trying to, find the answers in the book because they don't know them because they hadn't read it already. That's going to be the difference between the A's and the B's, to tell you the truth. But that's okay. This class doesn't normally have a lot of A's, and I'm okay with that. There's the ones that definitely, or the ones that get A's have definitely earned it by the end of the semester. Different topics in a chapter. This is going to be something you can do all the time because, we're going to be, every chapter just builds. So when we get to the alkenes and aldehydes, you can be looking at alcohol reactions and alkene reactions at the same time, because alkenes will react into alcohols, and then those will react into aldehydes. There's always something that you can tie together. We can start talking about aldehydes, and then we can connect that to, biological structures. Our sugars, our sugar molecules are going to be aldehydes, and so there's a lot of overlap in this class, and sometimes that helps when you are looking at different things in different ways, that they are the same or that they connect or how they throw back to other topics. That helps your brain. Throughout the chapter in the book, as you're reading, you're going to have these little chances to expand your what am I trying to make the connection to everyday life. So chemistry links to health, chemistry links to the environment, clinical application problems. I encourage you guys to try these, to read them, and in the back of the book there should be answers in case you want to check how you are doing. Figures, diagrams, micro to macro illustrations. This book, as well as online, does its best to try to show you what it is that we're describing or talking about. If you have a model kit, that might be useful. I did include a virtual model kit in the resources, but study those diagrams, look at those pictures. Those are meant to be supplemental to the reading. They're meant to help you imagine this stuff, because unfortunately, a lot of what we have to do takes place in our imagination in this class, chemistry in general. We have to try to picture something that's tiny and unpicturable. Sorry about that. End of chapter. When you get to the end of the chapter, sometimes you might even want to start at the end of the chapter. Look at what the highlights are going to be and what you should be focusing on when you're reading. But they give you some problems to do at the end. They give you some summaries. They give you some definitions, key terms. I encourage you guys, especially with the OChem stuff, to be doing the practice problems. Within the chapter, there should be chances or walkthroughs on particular problems as well. I often include those in the slides. So if you go through the lecture slides, either on your own or as with the video, do take the time to do those learning checks, those practice problems, because I promise you, they will help you on the exam and on the homework. Make a study plan. Read the chapter before class. Read it and then watch the lecture video. And then some of the things that maybe you were thinking about that were unclear, you'll hear me talk about them. Maybe I'll say it in a different way that'll make it clear. And keep up with the material. If you're still struggling on how to name alkenes and alkanes, you're going to fail every single chapter after that. Because there's no way you're going to name an alcohol or a thiol or an aldehyde or a carboxylic acid or an ester or have any chance of naming a ketone or anything like that if you can't name an alkane. So it all builds, okay? Keep a problem notebook. That just means, have something that you can go back and look at. Work sample problems before looking at the answers. My brother used to look at a problem and then he'd look at the answer and he'd go, yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, I'd do that. Yeah, I know how to do this problem. That's the answer I'd get. That's not the same thing. And so when you're on a test, you look at a problem and then what? You don't know what to do because you haven't spent any time actually doing problems. So do the problems. All right. Now we are going to have Zoom meetings that are going to function as an office hour moment for you guys to ask questions, get clarification. I encourage you to either post in the discussion if you can't be there, or to email me. But if you can, definitely get your questions asked. You should attend that. If you show up to a meeting and you're like, I have no idea how to do anything, and I ask you, well, are you reading the text? And you're like, well, I haven't done that, no, and I don't read, I haven't watched the lecture videos because I'm just so lost. Pretty sure that's why you're lost. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're going to be doing your part in this. I can teach you chemistry. I cannot learn it for you. I can't understand it for you. I can't do anything other than present the material to you and give you my best explanation on what I understand about it. So I hope you're doing your side of this too. All right. Again, this should be an easy question, so give it a shot. Yeah, I think all of these will pretty much help you, except for skipping class, which in this case will mean not watching the lecture videos, not reading the textbook, not doing the homework. You'll notice that the homework, there's no credit for homework done past the due date. I encourage you to do the homework even if you don't get credit for it, because it's going to help you on the test. So imagine the situation and all the people in my past classes that have failed to do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 homeworks, or I guess here it would be 12, 13, 14, and then on the exam, they don't know what's going on. And then at the end of the semester, they've got an F, and they're like, can I go back and do these homeworks and try to earn some points? And I just say no, because that's A, not fair to all the other students that were doing their job and, working hard to stay on top of things. And B, I find it to be quite irritating. So those are the two reasons I say no. So yeah, do the homework, read the book, watch the lecture videos, or at least go through the PowerPoint. Well, if you're not going to watch the lecture videos, PowerPoint slides may not be that helpful for you. They don't have a whole lot of built-in information. There's some pictures and things that I'm going to use and reference, but on their own, they're kind of bare bones. So you might as well just read the book if you're just going to go through the PowerPoint. Read the book then. And obviously just look at the pictures and the captions of the pictures and try to make sense of it. But if you want understanding, watch the lecture videos. So all of those things would be not skipping class. And lastly, the last thing I wanted to show you, just to remind you that chemistry does still include numbers. These are some measurements and some scientific notation and standard numbers. So you can see different units like liters, meters, seconds, kilograms, grams, but also standard number and scientific notation. We're going to talk about things sometimes in these numbers or in scientific notation, or talk about pH, which pH is the hydrogen ion concentration, the negative log of the hydrogen ion concentration. These are often entered as things like, 1.2 10 to the minus 13 molar, or 1.3 10 to the minus 2 molar. If you enter these in, you get different pHs. right? You need to know what these numbers are when you see them. If it's been a really long time, then go back and read chapter 1. Chapter 1 has some conversions and some help with dealing with some of these. But again, you can see very, very big numbers on one side, very, very small numbers on the other. That means positive exponents for things that are big, negative exponents for things that are little. Um, and again, the number itself is just how many decimal places we've moved over. All right, that'll do it for our first PowerPoint slide, or our first PowerPoint presentation. Um, Email me, post questions in the discussion if you have questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video.